Welcome back to the Dr. Doug Show. Today, I have a great interview for you. Today, I interviewed Irma Jennings. Irma is the founder of Food for Healthy Bones, and she's a fantastic resource for nutrition, for food preparation, for cooking, as well as osteoporosis navigation overall. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her background. So she's actually a former Wall Street powerhouse, and her life took a dramatic turn following a severe health crisis, which is so common in the functional integrative space. Personal crisis results in information, results in education, results in then turning to educate others because you're so excited about all the things that you learn. And I find that people that have had that experience have generally a really good message, and we see that today. For her, after being diagnosed with migraines, adrenal fatigue, and osteopenia, she realized that her fast-paced, high-stress lifestyle was destroying her health. This awakening led her on a transformative journey, exploring the profound connection between food and wellness. Leaving behind her corporate career, she immersed herself in the study of food as medicine, traveling globally to learn from the best. Today, Irma is the founder of Food for Healthy Bones, dedicated to helping others achieve vibrant health through mindful eating and balanced living. So in this interview, we talk about her history. We walk through sort of how she helps to educate people, the main components of that. She gives a great little show and tell at the end with all these different products that she's a big fan and advocate for. And then we talk about her concierge service in helping people to navigate the traditional medical system, which I talk about at length and is so challenging. So stick around if you want to hear from Irma Jennings. I think it'll be worth your time if you have osteoporosis, osteopenia, or just worried about your bones. All right, Irma, thank you so much for joining me on the Dr. Doug Show. I think we have so many things to talk about. I want to get started really just by talking about what inspired you to dedicate your work to promoting bone health through nutrition. I think nutrition is such an important part of our foundation and our approach. I'd love to hear what got you into this space.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that question. As I sat here and thought about that, it reminded me of where I came from. We often don't do that because we just are so much into the now, which is good, but sometimes our history is important. So I had a 23-year career on Wall Street in the 70s to the 90s. It was a male-dominated industry at that time. I was a sales manager in the tax-free municipal bond market, which is a $1.7 trillion market. That market helps municipalities build bridges, school buildings, sewer systems, basically the infrastructure of our nations. And just like bones are the infrastructure of our life, muni bonds had played a very significant role in financing. So I was on the sales side, and I was selling and buying and selling debt to the institutional market, as was my sales force. But however, the neglectful way that I was feeding my body and my bones manifested in various illnesses. We all know these stories with coming out of corporate world, an ulcer, debilitating migraines, sleepless nights, irritability, irrational mood swings, and then I was diagnosed with osteopenia. So your body is data is the mantra that I use, and it's the theme of my work. So when I started looking at this whole process, I thought, what am I eating? What is going on here? I want to say, first of all, cooking was something I was going towards, and cooking just didn't come easy to me. I want to tell a quick story. I was taking some cooking classes. I had enrolled in 10 years of cooking classes at the Natural Gourmet Institute in New York City and learning with the best chefs. And I was excited, so I had my Wall Street colleagues over for dinner. And I was cooking beef bourguignon, something I never cooked before, but I knew I had all the right ingredients. They walked into the door. They were very excited. They sat at the table. They brought the spoon up to their mouth, and they said, "Oh, Irma, this tastes like dog food." So, it was a total flop, but that's the way it goes. I mean, in the beginning of my cooking career, I was throwing away a lot of food. But going back to the Wall Street, I started bringing my organic homemade lunch to work. And the traders and the sales force would come over and say, "What are you eating now, Irma?" And then one of the companies I worked for had a kitchen, so it actually cooked my food. And then the traders and the sales force came over with a fork and said, "Can I taste your quinoa?" So it was opening up for me, and I also noticed the impact that it had on my body and my digestive system. Food as medicine brought me to study ancient foods in India, Bali, and Thailand. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. That's where my beginning started.
Yeah. And like so many people, you know, and myself included, having a personal health crisis leads to
Yeah.
this journey of exploration and realization. And then many of us, myself included here as well, love to teach, love to educate. So you've created a number of things, and I can tell you are very good at this. But I'm curious about the food for healthy bones. So there's some principles here that you've created over the years that
Mm.
you've learned about, you know, how to cook, what to cook. What are the core principles behind your food for healthy bones?
I try to keep things very, very simple. First of all, we're in a society of grab and go. So
Mm.
my first core principle is choose. Choose bone loving foods and eat them mindfully. This sounds so silly and simple, so very important. Chew your foods. You could chew your foods until they become liquid. That's a great mindful practice. Slowly and digests, and this helps digest all the nutrients as you chew it. You know, our teeth are there to be used, and when we do the 1, 2, 3 and then swallow, we're not using our teeth, and our stomach is saying, "What are you doing? What are you dumping in now?" Versus macerating your food with your teeth helps the teeth, and it helps the body. And from a true confession, I was a sugar addict, and I lack portion control discipline. Yet this action was wrongfully labeled and came with self judgment. So now, when clients are telling me, "Oh, I have such a sugar thing," I walk them through and we talk about the power of sugar and the negativity of sugar. And some of them are now doing the constant glucose monitor, which is just absolutely fabulous if you want to go down that route. I'm a data collector, so I have the Aura Ring, I have my Apple Watch. I like to keep track because that's me. So the constant
Mm.
glucose monitor really helps people understand their spikes, and we don't know until we know. I mean,
Right.
we should have glycemic or hyper. If you're hyperglycemic or have glycemic issues, then you can feel the sugar drop. But those tools really do help a tremendous now. So I stop and choose instead of grab and go. I eat organic whenever possible. Frozen vegetables are less expensive, and they're good because they're flash frozen. They're cheaper. Um, and for me, even though this is a core principle you're asking about, but I want to know what serves me best.
Mm-hmm.
I am an animal protein eater. So my ideal breakfast would be an organic, 100% grass fed steak, not grain fed. So that will keep me going in the morning until about 1 to 2 in the afternoon. So it spaces me out properly. If I eat oatmeal in the morning, which I love, I find myself grazing in my refrigerator at 10 a.m. Now, everybody's different. I have people in my Bones tribe and in my community that are not animal eaters, so that doesn't work for them. But I do find that always with a vegetable, the size of the protein, the animal protein, is smaller than the vegetables, and that's really important to understand. So I cook a steak once, I eat it 1, 2, or 3 times.
Yeah.
That's also another key thing for us in our household. So I want to say at core principles, oxalates are a thing. I don't want to get into them, but they are a thing. Some people will have signs of oxalate overload. I myself have it. It manifests in an aggravation of my interstitial cystitis. So I have the urge to urinate oftentimes. And I know that when I'm doing more oxalates, it kicks in. Actually, the other thing that I notice, and I'm going to talk about some of the foods that I have in my pantry, I used to drink Gerolsteiner water, the bubbly mineral water
Yeah.
that's high in calcium,
Yeah.
magnesium. It was problematic for me. And it was like, oh no. I mean, people say to me, don't take away my blank. Don't take away my coffee. Don't take away. But I had to self regulate and take away the Gerolsteiner. And also, a core principle is live your beliefs. So I'm going to tell a fast story. I was married for 20 years. It was a good marriage mostly, and then it turned a little sour, and we had to end it. We have a beautiful son that we have raised together, an adult son. And I was out living alone, and I didn't really like living alone. So I wanted to manifest a collective. So um, a woman that I had been working with, I was her health coach at the time. I've been a health coach since 2003. Her husband had just passed away. I was living in Philadelphia at the time. And I said, "What are you going to do with your home?" "Well, I want to keep it." Anyway, the story ends that I moved in and we are now boommates. So we're baby boomers of women of a certain generation that come together after life changes. So whether or not it's divorce or death or whatever, and we live together. And Vicky we've been living together for 12 years. It was an interesting blend. I have an outgoing personality. She's a little bit more reserved. So there was that balance. But this was my belief. I wanted to live in community. And my community, living with Vicky, she is the one that helps me roll out recipes every week for my Bones Tribe, my bone loving food recipes.
Mm-hmm.
And she is the nutritional educator for Rolling Harvest Food Rescue, which serves 650 families a week, fresh produce, and gives them a weekly taste with her team. And they create these menus and they put them in Spanish and Russian or Ukrainian. They translate the recipes. So she is working always about food. So our food is home centered. And I love that. So those are my core principles.
Yeah, those are beautiful. I love the way that you came about them too. It was very organic. You know,
Right?
you were
Yeah.
figuring it out as you went, as you worked with people. I think that's amazing.
Well, I think that that's a really good point because sometimes we want to rush a process and the process isn't, it's still marinating. And I could easily go into the victim role, which I'm very comfortable going there until it's like, okay, enough already. And some people don't ever go in there. But during the victim role, I was marinating and I was like, okay, it's not ready yet. And then boom, here it comes.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned meat too. This is like a topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about because you get into the controversies. I think we can avoid the controversies and just look at the potential benefits, and then people can decide, this is something that they're willing to do or not. And I'm glad that you've seen the benefits, and you said exactly the same thing. You know, what is my favorite breakfast? It is usually leftover steak. So it's that meal number 2 or 3,
Right.
mixed in potentially with eggs, sometimes by itself. But oftentimes it is a very protein forward meal first thing in the day. And then if I don't have a chance to eat again, I actually don't need to. Right.
Right.
I'm very satiated. I mean, for the rest until dinner, because I can make it's so satiating that I can make it through the day. And if I need to be dynamically or metabolically dynamic, I can do that because I didn't start with a higher carbohydrate meal, like an oatmeal or something like a cereal. And I would be ravished and I would be lightheaded and uncomfortable if I didn't have a break to eat again. So thank you for saying that. What other specific nutrients in foods do you think are really critical in maintaining healthy bones? We hear people talk about, get your calcium through your food. And, some people will talk about dairy as a good thing. We'll talk about dairy as a bad thing. So what do you think are the specific things that are most critical?
Just as you said, it's protein, it's minerals, especially calcium and magnesium, collagen, and how you get your collagen. I like to make bone broth myself. But one of the things in that question is that people think they know, but they don't know. They don't know if they're eating enough protein. They don't know if they are eating enough calcium. So one of the things I have my clients do is to put their food in Chronometer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not perfect, but it gives an idea of how much calcium they're getting in, how much minerals, amino acids. It's pretty detailed. It also reports oxalates. So that's a good place to start, but I do focus on calcium-rich foods. A lot of my clients are vegans, and I find that they struggle with getting the protein, and they often, I don't want to accuse anybody, but Vicky is a vegetarian, so I'm an animal protein eater. So we have a split or a bifurcated household, or I should say kitchen. And I find that what she was bringing home was something that I used to love, like lentil chips. And I looked at it as like, oh my gosh, it's in seed oil. So when I start looking, and we both started looking at some of the sort of grab and go, even though I'm saying not to do that, but every so often a snack is desirable. I'm making different choices now. So I'm not going for lentil chips, which one would think, oh my gosh, they're lentils, they're good,
Right.
but they're not organic. So when it comes to protein and diversifying, that's the other key thing, that we have to diversify our food portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I find is that people are so comfortable with eating the same thing over and over again because they're afraid to cook. So I want to open that up and say, all right, let's keep it simple. So for example, if you're eating eggs, not everybody eats eggs, but if you're eating eggs, you can make your eggs. And if you're doing dairy, in butter or olive oil or ghee. And that's if you're making it in ghee and then you're adding some of the really healthy spices like cumin or coriander, and they have such health benefits. And I want to go back to my travels. When I was in India, Thailand, and Bali, I saw mounds and mounds of brilliant colored spices. And I was like, they know something we don't know. I came from a salt and pepper world. That was as far as I went. And I was not really, even though I took the cooking classes, I was not really interested in spices until I realized the healing benefits of spices. That's an ancient technique that you can easily add to your food. So sprinkle in some cumin or coriander into your eggs and fold it over. And it's just very good and satisfying.
I will take that advice
Okay.
because I do fall into that trap of making foods the same way, although I do switch up my fats, kind of like you mentioned there. But yeah, I could definitely add more spices. I think it's a good thing in some ways that I'm okay with eating the same thing every day, unlike other members of my family who get really, really tired of eating the same thing over and over again. But a balance probably would be pretty good there.
Well, what about your gut microbiome? I mean, it needs variety so the little buggers can be awakened.
Yeah, I also blessed with a very, very healthy gut, and we do a lot of functional testing. So I've tested my microbiome multiple times. It's good. I mean, there's always a little imbalance. Could I have more commensal? Could I have better? Yeah, sure. Probably could be better. I could probably eat more fiber, and but I think overall it's pretty good, and we probably could all do better, and that's a good lesson too.
Yeah, but it's not about. I want to be very careful with that because my clients feel that they've failed. They failed when they get the diagnosis. They failed when their marriages fall apart. They failed. And it's like, no, no, no. You're changing. You're evolving. And do better, make better choices is sort of a softer way of saying things like, what do I want to give an example of? So when I go on road trips, I usually go for Fritos corn chips. It's my thing. It's junk food.
Yeah.
I can make a better choice, and I've been making better choices that I take along. I take along some nuts and some seeds and some raisins. Make my own little mini trail mix. So, making better choices, but understanding what the better choices are.
Mm-hmm. And then giving yourself a little grace. Corn and corn oil is not the end of the world if you do it every now and then, probably. And Fritos taste amazing. So I hear you. I'm curious. People ask me all the time about myths around food, and I love talking about food. What are some of the misconceptions about bone health and food that you see that enter into your sphere? Because I'm sure you get these questions all the time.
I guess what I see is that people go for the topic du jour. And everyone feels that, well, it's right for them, and I trust them, it must be right for me. So the myth is listen, to debunk the myth is listen to your body. How do you feel after you eat something? Do you have gas? Do you have bloating? Do you have all the symptoms that are saying this is not good for you? I remember when the smoothie thing was coming around, everybody was doing smoothie. And this is when the oxalate conversation really comes around because they were dumping all these high oxalate foods into a smoothie, adding a little protein powder and thinking, okay, I'm good to go. The spinach and almond butter and various things. And that was a trend. And that was like, oh, I don't know about that. So I just try to keep it simple and say, if your body is data, which it is, how do you feel after you eat that?
Yeah, that's a really great way to say it. So I've shared this before. My smoothie experience is, this was several years ago now, but before I knew about oxalates, I used to put frozen spinach in my smoothie.
Yeah.
And I felt terrible. And I was like, man, maybe it's got to be the whey. It's got to be the milk. It's got to be this. And then I heard it from somewhere and I was like, oh man, I wonder. And I took it out and it was like that.
A game changer. Right?
Yeah. And I see the same thing. People will say, oh, well, I heard Dr. Hyman say that milk causes fractures and I stopped, consuming dairy. And I'm like, well, how'd you feel when you consumed dairy? I feel great. Well, it's probably not that bad for you then,
Right. That's such a good point. I mean, we can go through the fancy tests. Those are great. Or we can listen to our body or we can do the elimination provocation protocol,
Yeah.
which is so dynamic because I've done the food sensitivity testing and I get my chart and it's like, oh, wow, I can't eat anything. And then I tuck it away out of fear of like, I'll do something wrong. And then when I did the elimination and provocation protocol, it allowed me to actually feel. And that's if your body is data and you want to tap into how you feel, that's a great way to do it. And you are eliminating the very sensitive foods, the soy, the corn, the dairy,
Hmm.
caffeine, and there are a number of them. I do it with my very funky functional medical doctor, who's also an RD, but she's very hip to the current what's going on with spices and things like that. So we do that together. So when we eliminate, and the body is saying, "What are you doing? What did you take away from me? How about my coffee? I can't live without my coffee." You find out that you can.
Yeah.
And then when we reintroduce in a bolus amount, like eggs, for example, you eat nothing but eggs, mostly eggs, for 3 days, and you say, I feel good. I don't have runny nose. I don't have joint pains. Okay, next thing I want to reintroduce the soy. Anyway, my point is that that's a way to do it in a way where the body is in partnership with you and is talking to you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah, and we kind of go back and forth. We use functional testing too. We do, we do all the fancy stuff, and sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes you need to tuck it away and like, you know what, I don't actually want to follow this because it's not going to be constructive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings me to another. This is an area that I hear a lot in our community, and people will have challenges around food. So what do you think are the biggest challenges that people face as they're trying to make this transition, this pivot into eating what most people are coming from, which is, a standard American diet, or maybe they were eating a plant-based diet and now they're adding some other stuff in. But what are these biggest challenges that you're seeing as they go to a bone healthy diet?
Well, the challenges are that they don't know what to eat.
Hmm.
Because everything is, I mean, the ultra processed foods are addictive everywhere. It's mind boggling what's going on with the ultra processed aspect of food. So they don't know really what to eat. So I tell them, go basic. Let's just have a chicken breast for lunch versus a turkey roll or something that you get at a deli. Let's keep it really simple. Let's try sardines. No, not sardines. Well, wait a minute. Here's a recipe that removes the stinky, oily taste, but let's give it a try on a salad. All right. So let's just try little simple tweaks. But I try to not take away, but suggest a better option. I remember one time I was coaching a client of mine and I went into his kitchen and I was throwing things left and right. You have this for how long? Oh my God, this is horrible. And I see him and he's like a puddle on the floor. I was like, uh-oh. I went into his
Too
sacred
far.
place. Too far. So that was a big lesson for me. Slow and steady, one thing at a time, and just make better choices. So how do people know what to make? What's a better choice? I mean, I offer them my calcium and food chart, which took many months to put together, but it's very detailed.
Hmm.
So it shows how you can get calcium from food. And going back to the dairy thing, yeah, there's that whole dairy conversation, the A2 milk. And I happen to have a farm. The cows produce A2 milk. I go to this farm and I feel like I'm in Mecca because the children are out there playing. Everybody's friendly at the farm. But so I decided to stop taking in dairy for my heart. And I'm looking at my own blood work around that. But we're all a living experiment. So I love eating dairy. I'm addicted to dairy. That's my personality. So I really have to watch my portion control. So I help people understand that that might be one of their foods that they eat too much of. And how do we deal with portion control without feeling that we're failing?
Yeah, there are so many challenges around food, and I think the biggest one that I see people coming in with is the same thing you just mentioned out of the gate, which is getting trapped in the ultra processed food world because it is so convenient,
Yes.
so appetizing, right? They are manufactured to be very stimulating of our senses. They even make the food so that they're inconsistent, so that your brain's always looking for the next bite.
Yeah.
They are
It's so
designed to
addictive.
be, yeah,
Yeah.
they're designed to be overconsumed. And then we wonder why, when you switch from that to eating a simple single ingredient whole natural food, you're like, I mean, it's good, just missing something,
Right.
because we've experienced that next level. And we see that. I have 3 young kids. And so, we want to let them be kids and enjoy the things that kids enjoy. But boy, teaching them to eat single ingredient whole foods is really challenging when you're competing with ultra processed foods all day long. So we see that in adults too. And it's convenient. But at the same time, when you get away from them and you start to eliminate them for the most part, then when you do consume them, you can almost sense it. When I consume something with artificial sweetener in it, I'm like, oh my God, it's so sweet. Like it's sickeningly sweet. And helping people work through that to see it, and being patient and helping them with the back and forth is something that takes time, and it takes programs. And we'll talk about the, kind of how you're helping people through that, because I think it's really important. But yeah, those challenges around food are definitely real. And a big part of how people got into osteoporosis and bone loss in the first place is that this has been going on for decades. This isn't new. The food companies are just getting better.
They're getting better at marketing. And I want to say, when people transition from the processed food to the unprocessed food, sometimes adding some ingredients like sea salt is helpful, and some high quality olive oil is helpful, because you're replacing 2 of the ingredients on a higher level. So if you're cooking chicken breasts, you might want to cook them in olive oil. And I mean, this is obvious, but it helps with.
Yeah, but I think giving people those little tips and tricks too, because I've heard people say, well, I went to chicken and I bought a chicken breast and I cooked it in a skillet with no oil because I was worried about the fat, and it tasted like cardboard. You're like, well, yeah, of course it did. Like, you can't. That's going to be terrible. So then, how do you prepare a low fat animal meat in a pan? You have to add fat. You want to add the right types of fats, and then seasoning, and it's going to make it better. Having those little steps, those little pieces, and a way for them to ask the questions, I think is really critical.
So just going back to the chicken breast, if you take that chicken breast that you cooked in some, whether or not you're using coconut oil, avocado oil, or olive oil, with a little salt, a little pepper, and maybe some spices, you can then throw it into a vegetable stir fry, which is just a deliciously easy way to get the vegetables, to get the color of the rainbow, and to get all the vegetables and all the phytonutrients that you get with the colors. And that's another one: eat once, or cook once, eat 3 or 4 times, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful way to do it. And then of course you're adding additional fats into the mix there, and you can get all of the nutrients in one place. Relatively easy to do, and it cooks out a lot of the anti-nutrients. So you're going to start knocking out some of the oxalates. Can you share with me, because you're working with a fair number of individuals with osteoporosis, share with me some of the success stories that you've heard. I try to present them whenever I can, but I'd love to hear from your perspective, what's working and how are people doing?
So osteoporosis did not come overnight. The reversing or the stopping or slowing down of the loss is the key thing, and that takes a tremendous amount of time. So when my clients are conflicted because they are struggling with sugar addiction, one of the best benefits that I can offer them is to introduce them to a functional practitioner who could talk to them about sugar and really help them. I could talk about the basic stuff. I know what sugar does, but I don't want to be punitive, and I want to have somebody who shows data. And also who has simple ideas of how to help. So we want to avoid a sugar rush. Somebody wanted to do a weight loss. Most of my clients are tiny eaters. And if anything, they forget to eat. I'm very unfamiliar with that, so I understand that it's real. But so if they're forgetting to eat, I remind them that we have, did you eat today? How many calories did you take in? We need, why we need calories. So I have an open conversation about them doing that. But the one that wanted to drop some weight, she knew that she was doing a lot of things wrong. So I had introduced her to Dr. Lorraine Maida, who has a metabolic reset program. And she did it. She removed oils from her diet. She was able to lose the weight, but she had a metabolic reset. And then she also saw that her aches and pains diminished. And then now she's introducing some oils in a way that's manageable. So my success stories are about what have you done in your life? This is going to sound trite, but are you getting your tests done? Are you doing your bone markers? Or did you find a doctor? Do we need to find a doctor? So the success stories are the willingness of my clients to work with me so we can get the information that we need to make the next decision. And that's pretty key. So yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can say, oh, I helped somebody reverse their osteoporosis in 6 months. I don't believe that that's possible. I have not seen that, but I interviewed Belinda Beck
Hmm.
from Australia, and she has a scientific proven method for increasing bone density. So, how do we get that program here in the States, which is secondary to what we're talking about? But I want to find the best exercise that has proven data for them
Yeah.
to take on. So, it's the tiny steps. How are you sleeping? And what about your bowels? Women don't want to talk about bowels. I'm very shocked because I love talking about bowel movements.
Right.
But, it's not a thing, and being sensitive to their needs. So, when someone tells me, when I ask that question, do you have a bowel movement? Yeah. How often? A couple times a week.
Right.
And then it becomes a bigger conversation. What's stopping you? What's holding you back? Because oftentimes it's about that. So how do I help them regulate their bowels, whether or not it's calm magnesium, or doing more fiber in their food, or whatever it is that helps them, helps the bowel to move. And then also to listen to when the bowel is calling. When the bowel is calling to evacuate, you can never, ever, ever ignore that call.
Yeah.
Some people do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And young kids do. I can
Yeah.
tell you that right now.
Yeah.
No, but we talk a lot about that as well. And, I think all of these things are important, and it's important to be able to have an open conversation with your team. And, even, when we talk a lot about hormone replacement, and we ask those really uncomfortable questions. Every hormones are a part of everything. And so it's every system's involved. So we get very uncomfortable there. I wanted to revisit something you said about slowing down bone and building bone. I interviewed Dr. Beck a couple weeks ago. I don't think that video is out yet at the time of this recording. I've been a fan of her research, the Lift More trials, multiple publications, and we talked about her new Onero program and how that's growing and developing, and it is coming to the States, but it's very limited, mostly in the Upper East, Northeast right now.
And California.
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me.
And even Wisconsin. I was on a call with a client yesterday. Wisconsin has.
Yeah, so I think it'll grow.
Yeah.
I always talk about the exercises that she does, and I talk about the component that most people forget in her program, which is the impact component. So we have that in our program, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. Everybody has a different starting point. But we do see when you combine it all, and this I think is a really powerful point that I want to drive home. When you combine the right nutrition, the right exercise, the right impact, the right supplements when they're needed, the right hormone milieu, depending on what someone's starting point is, we do see bone. And for people who are able to do all the things, we don't tell them to, but some people like to repeat imaging in 6 months. Those people that are doing that, almost universally, we're seeing BMD go up. Now, is it statistically significantly different? Is it outside of that 6%? Probably not in 6 months, but we're definitely seeing it head the right direction. So I think what we're missing in the bone health world is just the capacity to put it all together.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're focusing on educating people on, is how do you build a comprehensive program? Because it is hard and confusing
Well,
and sometimes expensive.
and I want to say this about that. The DEXA is notoriously problematic.
Sure.
So when we're using a DEXA, and this is one of the things that I need to have further conversation with Belinda Beck on, is like, we're using the DEXA, but my DEXA was wrong. I mean, I was going under a false illusion that my bones had been gaining strength. I have osteoarthritis. It was until I hired a certified densitometrist that revealed that, and I was like, what? So my mindset had to shift. And then when I had the echo light done, I saw that I do have osteoporosis. So that was my own reality check, but I always want to know the truth.
Yeah.
So I don't know that the DEXA is a reliable source. It's a piece. It's a piece. It's a piece. And then we have the bone markers, which are also a piece.
Yep. And that's what we try to represent to people is that, and when I say they're getting 6-month imaging, I mean REMS, not DEXA.
Oh, okay.
DEXA is not going to change in 6 months unless it's probably wrong or it was already changing,
Right.
because it takes longer to see it on DEXA. So we do use all of them, and we have to, because not everybody has access to REMS, or they don't have the cash to pay out for a REMS. They can't get the bone turnover markers, or doctors won't do it, et cetera. But if you can put all of those things together, I just presented a case like this on our YouTube channel, I think, where we talk, her DEXA really wasn't getting that much better, but her REMS looks a lot better. Her bone turnover markers look amazing, and so she's very confident. She's feeling good, right? So that when I talk about reversing osteoporosis, I'm just saying, let's change the metabolism from in error of bone loss to in error of bone building, right? So now we're headed in the right direction. And then eventually your imaging probably will get there. We'll see. But that's our goal, is to just really just shift people in that direction.
Right. And the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
The mindset of making progress and the changes that I'm making, the incremental, the small, tiny steps that I'm making.
Yeah. So to that end, let me ask about the new things in your vision, because I'm always out there looking. I spend a lot of my time doing research, and people send me articles now all the time, which is awesome. I love it. Keep doing it. But what do you think is new in the realm of nutrition for bone health that excites you? Because I'm sure you're doing the same thing I am, which is you're looking for, what are the tools that I can offer to my clients?
I thought about that question. I don't go with those kinds of things, Doug. I have to tell you that it just takes so long to have the truth come forward.
Yeah.
I call food companies and say, you're reporting this on your label. Is it true? Can you give me information on that? Are you testing your bones and your collagen for heavy metals? Yes, I am. Can you show me the report? No, I can't. Well, then what good is that? So, I mean, we have this whole like, oh my God, everybody needs collagen and everybody needs X. And even the hydroxyapatite that comes from bovine, we don't know the quality of the bones. Supposedly Douglas Lab has good quality bones. So one of the things that was important is that everybody loves chocolate and everybody wants chocolate. And the magnesium in chocolate is very bioavailable. I had called this company that I was supporting, which is called Mucuna. And that is a product that is, it's a protein powder. It's one little, I want to say seed, but it's a bean that doesn't have any oxalates in it. But they had a chocolate flavor. And I said, well, tell me about your testing with the chocolate. They're like, well, all chocolate, all cacao has heavy lead. I mean, you can't get away from that. I was like, well, then I'm not going to have people do that. So, because people in particular love chocolate, that I want to make sure that they're getting the right food. So cacao, this Mucuna, which is chocho, for people that want to make protein powders or protein smoothies, is a great alternative. It's high in calcium, it's high in protein, and it's low to no oxalates. So, but I call the companies. So I see something, I sniff it out, I call the companies, and that's what I do. So I'm not so much into trends. I mean, I went for the what were those, Beyond Burger? Is that
Oh, yeah.
right? I tried that, and I was like, boy, does that taste good. And then my stomach said, what did you do?
Did you just eat?
What did you do? So then that became, it's a highly processed food.
Right.
So yeah, I know that the food scientists are great. In fact, another fast story. There was a book that I was reading. I do a lot of book clubs with my clients, and this was a nutrition book about feeding your bones, and it was well written. And then they had created this calcium-rich vinegar. And I was so excited about it because you put in 6 different greens. So you put in your kale, you put in mugwort, you put in a number of dandelion, and then you ferment it. You let it sort of bake, but you add also Chinese herbs. And I found a Chinese herb place in New York. I know that they test for metals. And I was making this, and I reached out to somebody, a food scientist. I said, what company can I send this to test? Because they were reporting 325 milligrams of calcium per tablespoon. I was like, that's a lot. Yeah. And I sent it away, and it was like 5 milligrams of calcium. But yet it was touted as, and still is, like this is an alternative. So we have to be very, very careful about the trends and.
Well, and I'm glad you said that because so my perspective on nutrition is we don't really need trends. We don't really need, honestly, we don't need new products. We
No.
need actually to go back to our old farming practices, and we need to have good food that has been consumed for thousands of years.
Yes.
And that's what we need to focus on. It's not the new. We need to go back to the old.
We need to go back to the ancient. We need to go back to the cayenne pepper, which is 9,000 years old, or the cumin and the coriander, 7,000 years old. We need to go back to those spices and say, how can we add these? And oh my gosh, look, they're full of vitamins and minerals, and oh my gosh, and they help with GERD, ginger, smoked paprika. It is it's a nightshade, so some people can't do that. But oh, can I show a book?
Yeah, please. Put it on our resource list.
Can you see this book?
Yeah, Healing Spices.
Yeah. Oh, it's a Bible. It's so good. It's so
fantastic. We'll take a look. We'll put that in the show notes too. Yeah, I love the idea of going back to the ancient. I think that's such a great way to say it. And then avoiding the controversy that comes around. Well, but they only ate meat or they only ate plants. Those conversations drive me nuts. What do you think if someone listens to this and they haven't really made a shift in their diet yet, but they have a diagnosis or they're concerned about their bone health, they have osteopenia, headed the wrong direction? What are some practical tips that they can start with today? What are some things that you would say if you can give them, 1, 2, maybe 3? What do you think that people could do on their own, lowest hanging fruit for most individuals at least in our country?
A whole food, primarily plant-based animal protein diet. It's the transition is hard. My partner is more of a junk food eater, and I've been working with him for 11 years. So I have to be careful and tender with him. So it's a slow process. But I want to show you some products that I have here that might help with people that are transitioning. So this is the one that I spoke about, the cho-cho powder. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And some people who are doing dairy, this is for smoothies, this organic whey. If you're doing dairy, that's a great base for your smoothie. Sardines, I love sardines. These I buy on Amazon.
Yep. And those are sardines. Yeah, I haven't seen those before.
There's a sardine
in a glass jar.
In a glass jar. They're smoked.
Yeah.
What about those tins? Like when you're cooking sardines in the tin. Hello. I don't think that's a good idea. But these are wild caught and they're wood smoked. So they have a distinctive flavor, but they have the bones and the skin on them. So these are a real good, quick go-to.
And I'm going to mention the brand of that because some people will listen to this and not have the video. And so that was Polar. Is that right? Polar?
That's right.
Yeah. And we'll see if we can find a link to these when the team puts this together.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing that I have is that, this whole thing about phytates and oxalates and whatever have you, just to make life very simple, I have organic. When I do beans, and I do beans from time to time, my boo-mate is a bean lover. So this company, True Roots, is always here in our kitchen. And that's a real great source. Yeah. So that's for mung beans, and these are for lentils.
Yep. And I can see those are all sprouted. Yeah. Sprouted. Yeah.
Right. Now, a little bit more expensive. You could sprout them yourself. Some people do. I like it quick and easy. Yep. The other thing that I love is this particular green tea, matcha green tea.
Mm-hmm. And what's the brand name there? I can't see it on the image. Well, that label could use some work then from a marketing perspective.
Exactly, because it's very expensive, but it is so good. Now this is bitter, and bitter is better. Bitter, from a Chinese perspective, supports the kidneys, and the kidneys in the world of Chinese house the bones. So we want to love our kidneys, and this is a great food for that. I had mentioned the spices, and so these are I buy these at the health food store. Mm-hmm. Can you see those?
Yeah. So cardamom, coriander seed, cardamom pod, actually.
The little pods. Yeah. And also the cumin seed. Mm-hmm. So what I do with these is that I dry roast them in a pan until you see them smoke. And then I grind them up in whatever way you can. And then that's what I'll add to my chicken or to my scrambled egg. And then I also use ghee. And this is turmeric ghee. And this is bright yellow, and it stains, but it's so good.
Yeah, I bet.
I want to show you. This is how I keep my my kale fresh. So it has its own greenhouse effect with a little plastic bag around it. I always date it when I change the water, and that's how I keep my greens. And as I said, the Gerald Steiner, beautiful Gerald Steiner. I called this company. I didn't call them. I emailed them because originally they came out with all the measurements on the back for 1 liter. This is not 1 liter. This is 750 milliliters, but they were reporting for 1 liter. I was like, you're not telling us the truth. And they changed the label. So I was really excited about that. Some people like to start the day. Tell me if I'm going too much. Start the day with lemon juice in hot water. I do. And sometimes I add some olive oil to that for my liver. And this is an easy way to do it because it's right there. You don't have to buy lemon.
Pure lemon juice. Yeah, my wife does that, and there's lemon rinds everywhere in our kitchen.
Yeah, so if you don't want to do that, you just want to pour it in. That's a great thing. And then the fats, of course, we have the avocado fat, which just as long as it's organic. I'm putting it in front of my face, which might not be a good idea. And then the coconut oil. I'm off of coconut oil just for my heart right now. I'm going to see.
Yeah, you're on a saturated fat reduction trial.
Sat fat, right? Redo. And then this is the olive oil that I buy from.
What is that brand? Can you read that brand for me?
This is it's called MediterraneanDelicacy.com is the website. They're from Tunisia. I know the gentleman that harvests. He has the farm. He goes to Tunisia. He does all the things. He does everything. Nice. Yeah. So this is a great olive oil. This is about $30 a jar, but it's my little goal. And so if I'm packing up carrots and I put them in the cabinet in the kitchen, I put them in water, I date it, and then it preserves it. So I think that's it for my show and tell.
Well, that's an awesome show and tell. I didn't know you had that hidden behind your camera there. That's the surprises of the internet. Well, thank you for sharing that because we were talking before we hit record that whenever I present a new topic, people always want to know, well, how can I apply that? Yeah. What can I do? What can I do today? So I appreciate you doing that. And it also shows the extent to which you have done your research and how you prepare things and with all the herbs, the spices, et cetera. The last thing I want to talk about is something that we touched on again before we started recording. And you had mentioned the term, the silver tsunami. And we were talking about this in reference to being able to gain access. And you have a concierge program where you help people to navigate the medical system, which as a physician who was in the medical system for a long time, I'm very sensitive to the idea that it is, I argue, impossible to navigate well on your own. In my family, in my close network of friends, I help everybody to do it. And I can't imagine navigating our system without having a physician literally walking you through it. So tell us a little bit about your concerns and what you've experienced with the silver tsunami and access to medical care, and then what you like to do about it.
So the silver tsunami is 4.1 million people turning 65 this year, of which we think more than half will be women. So they're going to be coming into the system. They'll get that diagnosis because that's typically when they get their DEXA, right, unless they're ahead of the game. So they'll get that, how did this happen? I eat right, I do everything right. This can't be. And then they have to find a doctor. So some of my people are rural and it's problematic. So I find a doctor. I tell them to ask the right questions. I help them to get bone markers. If they don't want to get bone markers, we have other resources. So it's all about getting the right tests, getting the right bone markers. And then if the endocrinologist is only, here's your DEXA, here's your script, then we have a conversation with them that says, we're going to hold off for a little while. We're going to make sure that everything is copacetic before I jump right into the medication. But it takes time. It takes time to, first of all, women think that they have to ask permission of their doctors. You don't. I mean, it's a consumer-based, it's a profit-based business.
They work for you. That's right.
And we forget that. Women forget that. I mean, I've been fired from a doctor's office. He sent me a letter. I was like, this is a diploma.
That means you're doing it right, Irma.
So it's a jungle out there. They get mixed messages, and I just really want to hold their hand and talk them through every aspect of it. My doctor told me this. I have to do this. If I don't do that, I'm going to be crippled. That's what they told me when I had osteopenia in my 50s. They tried to force me to take Fosamax. But medication is important, as we talked about. Some people need it. But it takes time to get all the tests, to do all the work, to change things subtly, to understand how important sleep is and exercise, to do the right exercise. So it's not only the medical system, because it is very difficult. I will show up with my patient, but with my clients, excuse me, and be their advocate there. So whether or not I do telehealth with them, some doctors will allow that. Some doctors will say, "Who is she? What is she doing?" I'll have them on. I'll be on the speakerphone, on the cell phone, and now many of the doctors are saying to me, "Is there anything I didn't cover, Irma?" Which is really good because
Yeah.
it's a partnership. So that's what I'm looking for, the partnership. And if it can't be a partnership, then they're a mechanic. Do you know what I mean by that?
Oh,
They're
yeah.
like, yeah, if you need the medication, then
Right.
that's where you
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
I love that, the humility of the doctor to be able to say, look, man, osteoporosis is a big black box, and there are a lot of areas of it that I don't know, but I'm an expert in the drugs. I'm an expert in, whatever, the surgery, if it's an ortho. I think that's really where doctors should be, but it's really hard to get around the hubris, the ego, to say, all you need is this is what I'm told, this is what's right, and whatever Irma thinks is garbage. And I'm sure you run into that because they don't necessarily have time, and they don't want to make time.
Well, so the time piece, I really try to narrow the time. So when I when I work with my clients to get ready for an appointment, I have them do a spreadsheet of their DEXs with all the details of the DEXs. I went into one doctor and said, if a patient shows up with this, his eyes were bugging out of his head. He's like, oh, then I could diagnose properly because they're getting those 2-page reports with not enough information on them. So I try to work with the doctors. I understand the pressure of the doctors, and just let's make it easy.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
makes
Good.
it makes it hard for the clients. A
Well,
lot more work.
yeah, and I'm glad you're doing that because we're always trying to figure out the best way to serve our population, and of course we've created our full service program, and I think what we do is amazing, but it's not attainable for everyone, and that's why we have our community, and our community is different than your community, and so there's so many different ways to help serve people, and I look forward to having further conversations about how we could potentially bring some of the things that you found that are working together, and the things that we're finding that are working with exercise and so forth together. So I think this has been a great conversation. I say we end it now. We've gone a little longer than I usually make these videos, but this is all great information, and nutrition is such a huge component of the foundation of improving bone health. So I really thank you for your time, Irma.
Thank you, Doug. Pleasure.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview. I think Irma has such a great story to tell and such great information and wealth of knowledge around osteoporosis. If you're still looking for a community to join to help you to navigate your own osteoporosis journey, consider joining our HealthSpan Nation. For those that have gone through our masterclass, or for those that need additional support on their DIY journey, HealthSpan Nation is a fantastic tool, a community of people who are all trying to improve their bone health, talking about hormones, talking about the risk, benefits, the labs, all the things in the community. We do a weekly Zoom where we go through a topic-driven Q&A with myself or a team member. We have access to a vault of information, discount codes that we give our patients as well. It is such a great tool for people that are on a journey for their bone health. So consider joining HealthSpan Nation. You can look for that link in the description below on YouTube, or if you're listening to this on a podcast, just go to optimalhumanhealth.com. I'll see you on the next video.